Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for Friday, August 4th. Man, I cannot believe it's already August 4th. This year is flying by. We had some football yesterday. We're coming down to the stretch, the finishing stretch here for baseball. Now, before we get into the show, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to all our videos. Also, come join us at LineStar. Look at this deal, $29.99 a month. Best deal in DFS. Gets you access to all of our props and all of our DFS stuff. The projections, the optimizer, all the tools, the matchup tools, and whatnot. So come join us. It's fun. Get involved in the community. Join us in chat. It's a good time. We got some characters in there, but also characters that are very much willing to help everybody and their process. Now, let's get into the good stuff. Why don't we? So we're going to start off with the perfect lineups for DraftKings and FanDuel. We will then go into the pitcher owner or the winning lineups from yesterday's slate, and then we will get into the pitcher ownership for both DraftKings and FanDuel, followed by some stacks to consider. All right, so yesterday we had a 6-game slate. Perfect lineup on DraftKings. We got Hauser, we got Gray, a little Cincinnati stack, a little Baltimore stack. So Baltimore really went nuts. Cincinnati guys are getting in there, but they really didn't have that big of games. It's just that it was such a small slate to make it happen. The thing that's really crazy to me about this, though, the salary that was used for the perfect lineup was pretty low. But, that's how it works sometimes. To know that Marlowe would hit a grand slam, Jeffers would have a home run, and the cheap Baltimore guys would be who you needed is extremely hard from day to day. All right, so now the winning lineup. We got Epi, 12588, took it down, and he had the classic, 5-3 Milwaukee and Dodger stack. He had Julio Urias and Hauser as his two pitchers, so he ate the chalk a little bit pitching-wise. I mean, all pitching was pretty much chalk yesterday just because it was such a small slate and really only 4 or 5 guys that you would consider. And then he used, the Dodgers chalk, but got a little different with the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman's been on an absolute tear lately, so definitely makes sense to follow chalk there. All right, let's go with some FanDuel now, and yesterday's slate. All right, so Sonny Gray took the way, and we had a 2-man Milwaukee stack, big time leverage sneaking in there with Oakland versus Urias, and Seattle with Marlowe, who was against Ohtani. So nice little perfect lineup. On FanDuel, almost took all of the salary because of Sonny Gray's price, and our winning lineup over there is Z-Force 877-519-56, takes home $20K. He had 2% owned Sonny Gray. I did mention him as one of the guys you could play. However, I just wasn't really high on him. I should have been, though. He had a game. So with that, they had a 2-man Dodger stack, 2-man Cubs, 2-man Milwaukee, and 2-man Minnesota. So they did have some correlation. It was all 2-man stacks. But, that was enough to get it done. They were able to nail the 2 Brewers you really needed, which really was the difference maker on their team. And then nail, Freddie Freeman, which a lot of people are nailing him these days, and Cody Bellinger has just been hot. So congrats to Z-Force. While I wouldn't make this lineup, at least it has a lot of correlation in it. It's just, a little different than I typically would build. So this overall one-offs is way better. Please do not just do all one-offs. Anyways, we're going to get back into it. Actually, you know what? Please do one-offs so you can just keep paying the rake for all of us. All right. Now let's get into the fun stuff. The slate today, we got a main slate. We got 11 games, so back to a bigger one. There are a little bit of weather concerns, Baltimore and I think one other spot, but I don't think anything that's really too worrisome. So don't really need to worry too much about it. But as always, make sure you do check what's going on with the weather, just because anything can pop up, especially this time of year when so much of baseball is in areas where there's a lot of summer storms. All right, so start off, Aaron Nola. He is 10K and he's 42% owned. On this big of a slate, it's real surprising to see a guy like Nola, who really hasn't been that great lately, be this high owned. One thing I do have to say right off the bat, he's averaging 30% more fantasy points at home. He also has a good umpire. That Royals lineup also is one that we've been picking on lately. So with those factors, I understand that he's this high owned. However, he's been pretty inconsistent lately, and he hasn't been really lights out. So 4.23 FIP over his last 20, 4.09 over his last 5. K rate's only 25%, 27 over the last 5%. But the combined K rate at only 23% at 10K is pretty pricey. The value per K that you're paying there is not very good. You're paying a lot for that. So I don't know if I can follow the chalk here. However, if Nola goes out and has one of his ceiling games, which he does from time to time, where he's putting up 10, 12 Ks, you're going to have him. I just don't know if it's going to happen today. All right, next we got Reed Detmers. So Detmers is versus the Mariners, who are striking out 29% versus lefties. Look, they do hit lefties hard. 350 WOBA, 194 ISO. And Detmers is averaging 69% more fantasy points at home. But with this solid of a floor for K rate, I think you really got to be interested in Detmers here. He's 2K, almost 2K less than Nola. Projection isn't that far off, but the combined K rate 27.7, which is 4% higher than Nola, and he's cheaper. He is much more intriguing to me than Aaron Nola is, with ownership considered too. Even though they are very similar owned, I think Nola's 42, 38, 3% at that high that high of ownership doesn't really matter too much. All right, next we got Luis Castillo, 25% owned. He's in a good spot. The one thing is he is worse away. He has been, for most of the season, 27% less fantasy points while away. But Castillo has been a really good pitcher. 3.86 FIP over his last 20, 3.19 over his last 5, almost 29 or almost 30% K rate over the last 5, but 28% over the last 20, combined K rate of 28%. I think he's in a decent spot here. He's not in, LineStar doesn't like him as much as, say, Nola, but he is much less owned. Like the Mariners, Angels, hit the ball hard. 199 ISO versus righties, 337 WOBA, 25% K rate. There's a lot to like here. One thing we do have to say is he's allowing 40% fly balls, 35% hard contact. So with that, and it being warm in LA, I wouldn't be surprised if a ball or two goes out of the stadium. So, maybe we don't have a ceiling game with no earned runs here, but we very well could have a game where he's putting up, 6, 7, 8 Ks, allows 2 earned runs, and has a decent outing here. So that's kind of what I would expect for him, and that's probably why this projection is showing about that. Next, Merrill Kelly, 20% owned. Kelly is still working back, being on the IL. Has had 2 outings and hasn't been great yet, but he's been very good all season long, and I would expect that to continue as he's working back into shape here. He is allowing 47% fly balls, but only 26% hard contact. The Twins do hit righties decently, but they also strike out at 23%. Now, Kelly does not have the strikeout upside as the other guys that we have talked about, but he is a very good pitcher. And when he's on, he can get to double-digit Ks. It's just going to be a lot less than all the other guys we talked about so far. So combined K rate, 23%, 18-point fantasy projection. So, as far as value is concerned, LineStar does like him more than Castillo. And it is probably a slightly better matchup. Colin Ray, next, 17%, 6,700. Look, it's all about that Pittsburgh offense. They're just striking out a ton. 30% K rate. They do hit righties hard, but that K rate, is just so high that pretty much every pitcher is going to project decent against them. Combined K rate 26% at 6,700 is fairly nice. He is letting a lot of hard contact, though. Hunter Brown. All right. So he's been a little worse recently, but he did pitch in Colorado versus Texas, at Texas, versus the Mariners, versus Tampa Bay. So you got to give him a little credit for a 4.18 FIP over his last 5 with that type of lineup. Now he's against the Yankees. They strike out 23%. They do hit righties hard, but he's been pretty good. I don't love him, but I don't hate him. So I absolutely am going to be considering him versus the Yankees. And plus, if they just don't pitch to Judge, then he has a good shot at limiting runs there. Logan Allen. Logan Allen's been decent lately, but I just can't get behind that they're not letting him pitch that much, but it is a good matchup. White Sox aren't good versus lefties, striking out 22%. We got a 27.7% combined K rate here. So at only 7,900, he is a little interesting. The one thing is, if you just look at his average pitch, over the last 5 games, letting him go 87, 90 over the last 20. It's hard for him to really work deep into games just because of that. So you can absolutely take a little bit. I wouldn't go overboard, though. All right, Paxton. Solid K rate versus the Blue Jays, who struggle versus lefties. I think this is an interesting one that nobody's going to. Blue Jays are a good offense, but they're much worse versus lefties. So that is the interesting part. Jordan Montgomery. All right, so Montgomery last year was great after getting traded. Maybe it happens again here. Miami is decent versus lefties, though. Have a decent WOBA. Don't strike out a lot, but they don't hit the ball that hard. So there is a lack of K upside here, which gets me a little worried. I think his median projection is fine. I just don't see much of a ceiling out of him, and that is my worry. All right. We got to talk about Luzardo because guy has a solid strikeout rate. Texas can strike out a decent amount, but he's averaging 27% less fantasy points away, and he's giving up a lot of hard contact, and Texas is not a team you want to give up hard contact to. But the combined K rate of 27% makes this very interesting because he has a very, very high ceiling, and nobody's going there. So I think you do need to consider Luzardo, but it's, it's a little risky because you're going against that Texas offense. But Luzardo is a low-owned one to consider. Another one I got to throw out Yu Darvish there. He's against the Dodgers. I know it's a tough matchup. Darvish is a solid pitcher, though, and he's done very well versus the Dodgers in the past. 148 plate attempts, 187 average, 29% K rate. If you pull up his recent, he's had some real good games. At 8,300, he is interesting. Risky, yes, it's the Dodgers, but I think this is a very interesting play, and the Padres are going to be fired up for this one. They're 0.5, or they're, one game back from being 500. They win this game. They're back to 500 and inching closer to that wild card or division win. So I think Darvish is very interesting. All right. You guys are going to think I'm absolutely nuts here. And apparently LineStar thinks I am too. But bear with me for a second. Wainwright has always been a pitcher that is much better at home than away for his career. He averages more Ks at home, less earned runs, all of that. Lately, that hasn't been the case, but he's just been bad. No sugarcoating it. He's been awful, and it looks like he's totally done. But he is at 199 wins. He needs one more win to get to 200, and this is a very good matchup. So, Colorado striking out 27% versus righties. They're at home. They just traded all their good hitters. And I would not be that surprised if Wainwright is able to come out, go 6 innings, strike out 5 or 6 guys, and walk away with his 200th win. And possibly his last win of his career and of the season. But I think this is an excellent spot for him to get that. So, super cheap, but, I wouldn't be that worried about throwing that out there. I actually already have bet his over K prop, which the K prop was 3.5. I think that's definitely too low. But let's jump into FanDuel. We've gone way too long with pitchers today, so we're going to make FanDuel quick. Nola getting all the ownership. I think Detmers is great at half the ownership. Castillo is very interesting with 11% owned. Brown is definitely interesting. Merrill Kelly's okay. I just don't love the upside. For him to hit, you'd really probably need Castillo, Detmers, Nola to not have really good games. Paxton's definitely interesting, and Luzardo is interesting. Darvish is a little more expensive than I would like, but he has a very good record versus the Dodgers, so I guess you can consider it. And on FanDuel, I'm not going to Wainwright. I just don't think he has the upside that you need on this slate. Oops. All right. Now, let's go to some stacks here. All right, so the highest owned stack is the Cardinals. So no surprise, they do have them, and the Boston and Blue Jays game are the 2 highest totals on the slate. So no surprise that everybody's going there, but they're against Chris Flexen, who is just bad. 11.62 FIP over his last 5, 7 FIP over his last 20. So it makes a lot of sense to go to the Cardinals here at home and hopefully getting Waino his 200th win. Houston versus Severino. Severino hasn't been good, all season long, so why should it start now? Cleveland, Mike Clevenger just hasn't been that great of a pitcher lately, although his last 5 are decent. His last 20 just hasn't been great. Philly picking on Jordan Lyles, I think makes a lot of sense. They're at home. Lyles is, slightly below average pitcher in the MLB, so you can definitely get to him. Quinn Prester here is definitely a guy to pick on. 7.27 FIP. He's allowed at least like 3 or 4 runs in every start he's had so far. So you can definitely go after the Brewers, who are hitting well. Had double-digit runs yesterday, and they'll be cheap or cheaper, kind of allowing you to pay up for some pitchers there. Seattle versus Detmers is a nice little leverage stack. I don't mind it. Now, highest projected. So, Houston, Dodgers. Dodgers super low owned. I do kind of like Darvish, but on the other side of that, look, Darvish hasn't been as good this year as he has in years past. So maybe the Dodgers could get to him. He does have a 4.77 FIP over his last 5. So I do not hate whatsoever the Dodgers stack at this low of ownership. Texas versus Luzardo. Luzardo gets hit hard, so a couple home runs can definitely happen. If those are with people on base, it changes his outing totally. And Texas has a higher ceiling than most teams here. Boston versus Manoah. Look, Alek Manoah is like 6,600, and I didn't even mention him because he's been so bad this year. Mid-5s FIP. The dude has just lost it, absolutely. And the Red Sox hit righties well, so Red Sox are definitely in play. Padres versus Bobby Miller. I think that's absolutely in play. Milwaukee, we went over that. All right, so now let's look at the value guys here. Royals versus Nola. So that is your major leverage play, as Nola's super high owned on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Nobody's going to be going to the Royals. If the Royals can get hot, and we know Nola can give it up sometimes, then it's a nice little leverage play there. And, it's a cheap value stack too, which does not hurt. Minnesota versus Kelly. That's fine, whatever. I do like Cleveland versus Clevenger. Milwaukee versus Prester we talked about. Pittsburgh, I think, is an interesting one. Colin Ray can give up hard contact. Pittsburgh has some guys with some real power, so that makes a little sense here. All right, now ceiling, Houston, Dodgers, Padres, Texas, all teams we talked about. One we haven't, though, Arizona. Ober has been solid this year, but he's fallen off a little bit lately. And Arizona can just be a pesky offense, so it makes a little sense there. All right. So that'll do it for today. A little bit longer one than normal. Our highest implied total teams: Boston, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Houston, Milwaukee. All of which are fairly interesting there. So let's have a day. Good luck to you guys, and have a great weekend. I'll see you guys back here on Monday. Adios.